I'm Tenitra Batiste at ATL. Take a breath. You're finally back in the win column, but you don't need therapy Monday today, right?
I'm Tori McElhaney, and it's just nice to talk about a win again. Wow, it's been a long time.
I'm Aaron Freeman, and I'm looking forward to talking about some of these missing ingredients that we haven't seen on both offense and defense all year long.
I'm Jarvis Davis, and I really appreciate all the random people that spoke to me over the weekend. I appreciate you, and I love you.
ATL! ATL! Rise up, A-Town. It's the Falcons squad. Everything Atlanta Falcons every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the ATL. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Straight from the ATL, the Falcons Squad Show starts now.
Welcome into the Falcons Squad Show, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Locked On Falcons host Aaron Freeman, Locked On analyst Jarvis Davis, and Falcons senior reporter Tori McElhaney. The Squad Show is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is sponsored by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Now, the Falcons had their largest margin of victory over the Saints since 2019. We'll discuss how the Falcons' offense, maybe most fluid performance in weeks, was a good look that may have brought out some bad feelings too. And special teams, it was solid enough, but was that enough to get us back to believing they're back? We'll download on that. But first, let's talk about the divine time we saw in seeing number 0 back in the lineup. So Jarvis, Divine Deablo returned to action after missing 5 weeks with that fractured forearm and even being limited with a cast on one hand. He was the Falcons' third leading tackler with 8 total tackles and a TFL Sunday. But what was the most significant impact of Deablo's return to this defense?
You put everybody back into position to succeed, right? Like you put Ronnie Harrison into like more so of a sub guy than being your standard middle linebacker, right? And he can kind of play a role for you. You have Caden Ellis going back into his role where you can kind of flex him to that outside linebacker spot when you go to that bare front, so he can rush the passer at some as well. You can mix it up a little bit because when you think you have a young quarterback, if you giving him different looks, you're moving guys around. Like, okay, a lot of times when teams going up to the line of scrimmage, they say, hey, 55 is the mic, 55 is the mic. If 55 is standing on over the tackle on second and long, who's like, okay, all right, who's the mic now? Okay, is it 0 or is it 36 or whatever? Like, so I think that Divine Deablo coming back into the fold, it gives Jeff Ulbrich a lot more options than he did before, and it put all of your guys in the roles where they should be, and that's what helps that defense look the way it did yesterday.
Yeah, and we talked about this yesterday, Jarvis, on the offensive side of the ball, and we'll touch back on that again, just in terms of how many hands touch the ball offensively. But yeah, when you're able to go down the list and see literally like 17 players on defense get a tackle, it may not seem like a big deal, and certainly all of the tale of all the reasons or rationales for why Divine Deablo's return is that impactful aren't just told by the box score, but that is telling that everybody was able in some way or shape or form, even if just for one play here, one play there, impact the game. I think is very, you don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss that. That's something not to be overlooked because, Tori, yeah, that's an intangible. But I think that when you look at Divine Deablo's impact on yesterday's game, it's both the tangible and the intangible.
Yeah, I think that it's actually really interesting, and this was a stat that was brought up to me last night, is, we've heard so much from Jeff Ulbrich over the last month and a half, 2 months, about wanting to win with 4 up front and not having to blitz to the degree of which he has been previously. And I think going into this game against the Saints, I was expecting full heavy blitz, doing some stuff with Divine Deablo that we saw them do in the first month and a half of the season before he got hurt. But you didn't see that. They actually blitzed at a rate that was significantly less than what they have been honestly all season long. I think it's one of the lowest. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I believe it's the lowest. And
I think that's Tori's second lowest.
Yeah. Season. So that to me, I think actually shows growth within players around Divine Deablo. Like, I think the fact that you can have guys like James Pearce Jr., Brandon Dorlus, or Guerrero, Jalen Walker, like winning their one-on-ones up front to the degree where you don't have to do this elaborate stuff with Caden Ellis or Divine Deablo, actually shows that this defensive front specifically is trending in the right direction. And it was nice that they were able to kind of get back on track in a performance that they had against the Saints after coming off of 2 games where, let's be honest, they gave up career and franchise records to a single player from the Colts and a single player from the Carolina Panthers. So I think that, it's one of those things where I'm looking at Divine Deablo's presence back into this defense, but also seeing the effects of growth from players who have been on the field and doing things and growing while he's been on IR.
Yeah. And I think you make a great point, Tori, about the fact that you're seeing players evolve. And so across time, but then he comes back and it makes that much more difference for him and them and what their continued elevation is. What for you, Aaron, maybe again, whether it was what Divine Deablo did directly or indirectly, what was the best thing and the most impactful aspect of his return that you saw on defense Sunday?
Well, I think Jarvis nailed it in the sense of sort of it allowed other players to shine in ways that we've seen them shine. But, in terms of just like that tangible ability that Divine Deablo himself is bringing is just that sideline to sideline speed that was sorely missing from this linebacker group over the last month with him out of the lineup. And so you saw that a number of times, him able to get to a spot and make a play and make a tackle, I think was a big part of it. But I think sort of continuing what Tori's talking about, like that's one of those missing ingredients I was referring to at the top of the show, which is the Falcons haven't been able to get reliable pressure with 4 all season long. And so they were able to do that in this game. And, the big question, I know one of the people in the chat is asking how much of it is this, pass rush turning a corner versus how much of it is them preying on a weak Saints offensive line. It's probably a combination of both. And so the real story we'll be able to tell, especially this upcoming week against the Jets, who have 2 very young tackles, but are very up and coming tackles. And it'll be a great litmus test to sort of see if this pass rush has turned the corner in terms of the 4-man rush, or whether or not the Falcons were just benefiting from facing a weaker Saints offensive line as well. So I think if the Falcons can get what we saw this past Sunday with a reliable 4-man rush, it really does take this defense potentially to another level, because even early in the season when they were playing at a high level, they were predominantly relying on, those 5 and 6 man pressures with the blitz. And if they can, only do so with 4, that allows them to get another player in coverage. And, potentially that has a trickle down effect where you can maybe get your safeties being a little bit more aggressive because they don't have to necessarily have to worry about masking for some other issues, and maybe that could lead to some turnovers. And so I do think if the Falcons can get reliable pressure with 4, that is kind of a potential game changer for this final stretch of the season.
And I think you Free and Tori make good points, because you talk about the development, like specifically the one thing that I saw in the game yesterday, I've constantly talked about or pointed out that, James Pearce Jr. loves to run that loop, run past the quarterback. And you have to have that rush discipline, because that quarterback sees you doing that, they're going to automatically know where their escape is. But yesterday, I felt like he really pushed the pocket. He was able to whoop his man instead of trying to just run around him. And as he was pushing that pocket and he saw that the quarterback was trying to step up a little bit, because I think it was Arnie Abikadi on the other side, he had kind of beat his man, kind of ran that loop, but they were able to squeeze that pocket, and Shuck tried to jump up there. And then that's when Pearce was able to kind of get rid of him and jump inside and get the sack. So that's the type of thing that, having that patience as you rush, and then your teammate helping you out as well. When they're rushing as a unit, these young guys like that, like you got Dorless, Rook, AK getting in the fold, Jalon, all those guys are rushing together. Oh my gosh, they're going to start getting sacks in bunches like we saw yesterday.
Yeah. And speaking of that, Jarvis, Jalon Walker, James Pearce leading all rookies, number 1 and 2, literally with 5 and 4 sacks respectively on the season. Yep. That means they lead rookies like Nick Scorton and Mike Green, names that
Drew Carter too. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah. Names that you are familiar with, I'm sure, if you followed the prospects and some of the draft picks that people were hoping would come here to Atlanta, right? But you got Walker, you got Pearce. What's most impressive about each of their performances that you were alluding to, Jarvis? Not just Sunday, but maybe even that trajectory that you guys are talking about that we started to see as the season has progressed.
Ever since Jalon has come back from this injury, he has been a force. I'm talking about in the run game, and I even kind of joked about and was kind of serious about it. Hey, Jalon's getting groomed to replace Kaden Ellis. I was like, I don't know if I want to move him from that edge.
Jarvis, I'm sorry to cut you off, but that is absolutely what I said in our post-game podcast. I was talking about how, I know I've made jokes on this podcast about how I never, ever believed for a second that the Falcons were actually going to really focus Jalon Walker into being a true traditional edge rusher.
Yeah.
I'm starting to finally believe that just for the sake of what he's been able to do since he returned from that groin injury and fully finally got 100% healthy. I didn't think that was going to be, I thought by this point in time, we would have seen him moving about, being more of a Kaden Ellis than a true, what James Pearce Jr. traditional edge rusher looks like. The fact that he not only is doing what Jeff Ulbrich set out for him to do day one of him being in this building, but doing it to the degree of being a leader amongst rookies in production, I think speaks a lot to who Jalon Walker is, but also the plan that Jeff Ulbrich had for him from day one to today, and not changing that plan and giving Jalon Walker the time and energy to really focus and master one thing. I'm sorry I cut you off, but that was absolutely going to be my point too.
No, it's beautiful to watch, right? Because I know I was howling at the moon when Kirby said he was going to move him around, play some linebacker. I was like, no, he's an edge player. And then when he got to the league, and me thinking about what a legitimate edge or a carbon copy edge looks like in the NFL, he doesn't fit that mold. Right. But oh my gosh, the play does. The play fits the mold, and I feel like he can break that mold. So I see the plan as far as how he could fit. If they don't want to pay Kaden Ellis all this money or whatever contract he might command, but man, he's probably your best edge player right now on this team. Far as from in the past and in the run game. As a combo player, yes, he's that guy for me on this team right now. So yeah, I get excited when I see him play the way he's been playing these last few games.
And speaking of combo, Jarvis, on that other side of that first round of rookie potential for this Falcons team, what about the play of James Pearce Jr.?
The growth, I like to see the growth. He's the exact opposite of Jalon, right? Just from if you were to say, get a 3D printer and say, hey, print me out what an edge rusher looks like in the NFL, James Pearce Jr. would come out that mode. Because when you think about guys who've had success rushing the passer in their rookie years, they all look like James Pearce. When you're talking about Alden Smith, the likes of those guys just coming in and having that success, Javon Curse, they all long and look like basketball players, and they can just run like crazy, run these crazy 40 times. So yeah, to see him kind of evolve, I feel like, Jeff Ulbrich has schemed him some sacks up, right? He's come unblocked on some of those plays, but he made the play for sure. It counts. But I think that yesterday was indicative of him having that patience as he's rushing, understanding there's a pocket here and I can't just rush as an individual And you saw that, and he was able to reap the benefits of that. So when players have success doing what they're supposed to do from a technique standpoint, that means they're going to continue to do it. And when you apply that to the raw talent that he has, you might want to start watching out.
And Tori, I know you chimed in about Jalon, and certainly if you want to add anything about Jalon, go right ahead. But I also wanted to ask you about your thoughts on that evolution or that progression of James Pearce Jr.'s play.
Yeah, I think that he's just doing what we thought he was going to and what like the expectation was. I think that it shows that the Falcons' conviction on him was correct, that he is at least for the time being, like looking like he should have been a first round draft pick. Whether or not you agree with the decision to move into the first round to get him is a completely different topic of conversation. But I think just in James Pearce Jr., what he's doing, how he's affecting the game, also just like how different he ultimately is from, I think, what a lot of people didn't give him credit for being through the draft process. I think that he is somebody who cares a lot about this game and plays really, really hard. And I think that he's somebody who, I mean, he just did a sit down in our facility about like talking about the impact that even Jalon Walker has had on him as an individual and how he loves being able to look across the line and see number 11 on the other side. It makes him want to go harder, wants to play harder. And I love hearing that part of it too. So I think that it's a really good situation that James Pearce Jr. specifically is in.
Mm-hmm. And what about for you, Free, when you think about these two at the top of the rookie class for the Falcons and just what they were able to do yesterday, and as you guys both mentioned, Jarvis and Tori, the health of Jalon Walker, him getting closer to 100%, JPJ starting to look like someone who should have been drafted in the first round. But for you, what's been most impressive, what was most impressive in their performances Sunday?
Well, I think it's funny because Jarvis and Tori were talking about Jalon Walker sticking at edge, and I've noticed each of the last two games that there have been plays where they have lined him up as the sort of Mike linebacker, as an off-ball linebacker, as a rusher. And they rushed him on those plays, and he didn't necessarily win, but it came last week on that Billy Bowman sack, and then this week on the James Pearce sack. And so it's like Jalon Walker isn't winning in that situation like he is winning on the edge, but at the same time, I feel like it's a different wrinkle that the Falcons can throw at offenses that allow other players to kind of get featured, because the offense is like, okay, why is he there? We have to account for him. Those sorts of things, similar to what we saw, especially towards the end of last season with Caden Ellis, where pretty much, the Falcons were able to take advantage of, opposing offenses having to account for him in the rush. And that created opportunities for like JD Bertrand and others to get some wins. And so I think that will be an interesting wrinkle moving forward with Jalon Walker, if that's something that the Falcons lean more into, outside of those plays when he's lining up at edge and he's been more capable of winning on his own in those situations. Then with James Pearce, he's been, particularly on Sunday, like when we talk about like these guys winning against offensive line, a lot of James Pearce's wins came against the right tackle. Asim Richards was not their normal right tackle with Taliase Fuaga out of the lineup in this game. And what to me has been the most notable thing about James Pearce's rookie season, that when you look at arguably his three best games, against the Saints, it was the first two games of the season when you didn't have a Tristan Wirfs and a Christian Darrisaw. And this is not meant to knock against James Pearce or whatever, but he has really taken advantage of the opportunities when he's gone up against, subpar or backup offensive tackles. And again, like that's the transition from where he is now, where it's like he's really taking advantage of those guys. And then he's still getting wins against the quality tackles, but like that's going to be the measure of progression, where when is going to be the point when he can have these types of games where he gets 3, 4, 5 pressures and multiple sacks in a game. Will he start getting those against some of the better tackles? And that's going to be a real good sign. So I feel like this current data point with James Pearce is a promising sign for where he is today. And then it's a great measuring stick to sort of see where he could be once he starts having these types of games against higher quality competition. But you can see the potential, and it's just going to take time. Hopefully we'll get to see more of that this season and in the years to come with James Pearce. But there's a lot of upside with both of these two young pass rushers for the Atlanta Falcons, and I think both of them are off to a good start in their rookie seasons.
Indeed, and you got to admit, the offense looked pretty good yesterday too, with 18 under center. We'll take that under further review. This episode of our Falcon Squad show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Now, you and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. Now, if you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And listen, if you've been using Prize Picks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs, it keeps every game exciting. And you can pick from your favorite players. These guys are talking about the fact that it was Sack City yesterday, Sunday, for the Falcons. So maybe if you pick Brandon Dorless, that was a good look for you. Or maybe if you're looking at what the Hawks were able to do, because Hawks and Falcons were both in New Orleans this past weekend, and especially what the Hawks were able to do against the Pelicans Sunday. If you pick Nickeil Alexander-Walker, good look for you as well. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. So guys, the offense looked pretty fluid. That's the word that we used on Sunday when thinking about what happened. Now take this into consideration, Tori. In the win against the Saints, the offense actually scored fewer points than they did in the loss to the Panthers last week. But again, it was kind of looking at an offense that flowed, and the uptick there that was very encouraging. So what for you were some of those wrinkles you saw maybe in the offense Sunday that made it seem like it was a little more efficient and a little more effective? And listen, Tori, we know that the Saints are a subpar team, but again, don't want to take away from the Falcons just because of what the Saints are not. You still want to kind of talk about what the Falcons were, especially in them being efficient and effective yesterday.
Yeah, I think that first off, they supplemented the run a little better than what they had been, which going in, you thought that could be something that they could take advantage of, considering the Saints were the 21st run defense in the league. So I kind of expected the Falcons to be able to do some stuff with Bijan in the run game. Surprisingly, what worked well for them with their screen passes to Bijan on the outside, and him being able, that just goes to show, with those plays specifically, it's all about those receivers and tight ends on the outside putting a body on their guy, because Bijan can make people miss. He can get 30 yards pretty easy as what Bijan is. But I think that the wrinkles that everybody's talking about today is play action and going under center. And I do think that there is a conversation to be had about whether or not the Falcons felt that Michael Penix was ready to go under center, was ready for play action this season. I think the fact that they didn't deploy it hardly at all when Michael Penix was the quarterback, and then went to it to the degree that they did this Sunday with Kirk Cousins, I think that's the answer to the question. I'd still like to hear from Zac Robinson when we talk to him later this week on kind of that wrinkle, to use that word. That's kind of the word of the podcast today. But I even thought that, and I'll have to go back and look at the numbers, but even looking back at what Kirk Cousins did the first 10 or so games last season compared to the rate of which play action and going under center was deployed yesterday, it felt significantly more. So there are a lot of questions that I have about that part of the offensive game plan, if it is something that they really saw as being able to, they could do it with Kirk Cousins in this situation against the Saints, or if this is something that we're going to see them do now that Kirk Cousins is your starting quarterback for the remainder of this season.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the question of, well, what does that mean for Michael Penix and his development and ultimately what they need from him? And how does the injury to Michael Penix even slow down that development and getting to the point of being comfortable to do this stuff?
Did we lose T?
I think we did.
Yes, we did. Yes, because she has that look.
She looks very locked in right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Pun intended. So, but yeah, I think you're spot on, Tori, because and there were, like you said, there were some times that Penix was in used play action. It was just weird, and it was just awkward because you did it out of the pistol, and it. Like the whole point of the play action is to be able to stick that ball out there as if you're about to hand it off, and to draw those linebackers up so you can get a good look downfield. But that wasn't the case. He was just kind of like turn around and whoop-de-doo, and don't even stick the ball out there, and then kind of just do one of these numbers and try to throw the football. So it just looked awkward. So that's why I feel like there was a lot of flow to this offense because. And I think it had to do with personnel too, because you didn't have Drake London and you didn't have so you didn't have your number one wide receiver. So, deploying Cardero Hodge in 11 personnel, I mean, no shade towards Cardero, but we know what he is. We know who he is. He's a special teams guy. That's it. That's what he does. So I think that if you can get your blockers, get a couple more blockers out there, start running at 13 personnel, put Kirk up under center. And I think not only the personnel standpoint, help you out in the run game, get some more blockers, and hey, man, we're about to run the football. Do something about it. Defense. And I think the other part of that was Kirk saying, hey, man, here's what I'm comfortable with. Let's do this. And I think that is why we saw this offense have success. And I think that's a part of why you had success last year, to get off to that 6-3 start. So having that veteran quarterback, knowing exactly what he's comfortable with, knowing exactly how he can have success in his league. He's thrown for a lot of yards, and combine that with not having your wide receiver one. Okay, let's get you under center and let's throw a whole bunch of tight ends out there and let's see if we can make it work.
So, Free, you would say, too, that maybe having Kirk Cousins under center, and we'll talk more about that. Since you alluded to it, Tori, I said, okay, you know what? Let's have that conversation, because the reality is everybody's kind of having that conversation. But first and foremost, Free, you feel like having Kirk Cousins there under center and the way Zac Robinson was able to utilize him shows that he does give him more tools in that toolbox?
Potentially. I mean, I think that, you compare it last year, where, again, I don't know exactly the number of plays that they were under center in this Saints game, but I know for the entirety of Kirk Cousins' 14 starts last year, it was about 20%, and I want to say it was like 10% of Kirk's throws were under center last season. And big talking point last year was, how much of that has to do with Kirk's lack of mobility coming off the Achilles injury. And now to sort of see them lean on that in this game, I think sort of speaks to what Tori and Jarvis are getting at, where it's just like, actions speak louder than words. And the Falcons' actions are basically telling us that, yes, Kirk couldn't move last year. And that's why we didn't go under center. And their actions this Sunday by leaning as much in the under center compared to how they were operating the offense under Michael Penix speaks to the actions of, yes, we don't think Michael Penix is particularly comfortable with this element of the offense. Now, to Michael Penix's credit, the play action out of pistol over the last couple of games, his final few starts, was much, much more effective than it was pretty much throughout the entirety of the Zac Robinson era as a play caller, where it was like basically the worst play action attack in the league. And so, this has been a big element that we spent a lot of time this offseason talking about. If the Falcons can implement this is going to allow their offense to play its best football. And that, I don't think it's a coincidence that you're basically seeing the Falcons averaging around 25 points per game over these last month, basically with a more effective play action passing attack. And so it'll be interesting to sort of see if this is the norm of what this offense is going to be for the rest of the season. As Jarvis said, like, I think, not having Drake London is a big part of why the Falcons leaned as much on it. We'll see if the Falcons get Drake London back soon in the lineup coming off that PCL sprain. So, it's funny because it's just like we have so many more questions about the Falcons offense now, even though we did get some answers on sort of what the Falcons offense is based off of, like, oh, we didn't do that before because of this, and we didn't do that before because of this. And it's like, oh, okay, we know that now. But at the same time, it's like, what does this do for the future of this offense for the next 6 games? What does this do for the future of this offense over the next year with Michael Penix potentially? All of those are still unanswered questions at this point in time. And so, it's just funny, like, we're still having these conversations about where this Falcons offense is, even at this stage, even coming off a game like this.
Yeah, where it is and what it is. And Tori, that's why I kind of started the show asking or saying, like, hey, the offense was good, but you kind of still have bad feelings. And what I meant by that was more of just what Free said. It's like you walked away with some answers yesterday, but you might have walked away with more questions and more postulating, right? Like, we talked about having Kirk Cousins and what that means for the toolbox. Does it make you concerned about the thoughts and the limitations that Michael Penix Jr. may have had under center, but of not being able to put him there, or even thinking about, hey, should Zac Robinson have pushed Michael Penix Jr. a little bit harder in terms of using him or putting him under center? But then did you have was that offense concerned? Was his staff concerned about the margin of error and failure for a team that was expected to go to the postseason? So I don't know. It does seem like it just has. And look, Tori, I'm not asking you nor Jarvis or Free as we wrap up to answer the questions definitively, but just wanted to get you guys food for thought, because it's like now our heads are swimming a little bit.
Honestly, I'm kind of happy to be in this spot, because it's one of those things where it's like I feel like I've felt crazy for the last 2 years being like, why are they not doing this? Like, why is this not something that's happening? They're like, in almost kind of like gaslighting myself a little bit. And now to kind of see the reality of the situation, to exactly what Free said, that like the actions speak louder than words. And just because no one was saying the obvious and kind of like refuting it, it's now nice to sit here and to be like, no, the obvious was the obvious. And we were correct in our assumption. And it's one of those things that I'm kind of like, okay, now that it's out there, like now that you know why the Falcons weren't going under center, now that you know why play action wasn't being utilized potentially to the point where you kind of need it to in the NFL, now that we know why, it's like, okay, now the dominoes can fall to get to fix it. Like, until we had that concrete, like, this is what's wrong, this is why they aren't doing it, and this is what needs to happen in order for them to feel confident to do it. Like, until we got that, it was going to be this weird gaslighting thing in my own brain of like, well, they're saying one thing, but it doesn't make any sense why they're saying this. So now to be able to move forward in a place where it's like, okay, we know why they weren't doing these things. And now you can fix it. Now you can face it head on, and you can talk about it, and you can get better.
Yeah. And I think that, it's funny how things can change when people get that TBS, that tight booty syndrome. When people start putting that, why are you looking at me like that, T?
Continue.
Did I say something wrong?
No, just go. You're making an important point, so I don't want to take you off your mark. So keep going. Stay focused, my friend.
So let me explain myself, and then I'll move on. Tight booty syndrome is when things start to get a little hard. Whoa, I don't even know if I.
Yeah, it gets a little difficult. Everything, the pressure.
Life gets difficult.
Life
gets difficult, and people want you fired. People don't want you to do your job anymore. I feel like once that pressure comes in, and Rob even mentioned it himself last week, you're like, I'm the leader. It's bad leadership. I need to be able to figure this thing out. So a lot of times when things get tight, and the leader says, I need to figure this thing out. So that means he's going to having conversations with coordinators and position coaches, like, hey man, here's what we need to do. Here's what I'm not seeing. Here's what I need to see going forward. And I wholeheartedly believe that might be part of it too. With Zac, and say, hey man, things got to change up a little bit. But guess what? Penix comes back. He needs to get comfortable with this too, because I like how this offense looks. This is why I hired you to be my OC, so we can implement some of these things and have some flow to this offense, so we can put all our players in position to succeed.
Aaron?
Yeah. I got distracted by Jarvis making an excellent point, but kind of derailing it with his TBS, and I was just like, how does he do this all the time?
It wouldn't be him if he didn't.
I have no follow up,
man. I just got on airplane, man. I'm sorry.
Jarvis made a great point. Their backs are against the walls. We'll see if they
Free has no words. Tori, thank you for being the voice of reason today. We appreciate it.
I've said nothing. Like I've just been sitting here minding my own business.
Girl.
How are we supposed to follow up that? What
minding my business.
Yes. It's the safest thing to do, Tori, if you just stay in your lane, mind your business, look straight ahead, and get ready to talk a little bit more offense when we come back. This episode of our Falcon Squad show is brought to you by Game Time. Now, the NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why you should use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. You pull up on Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, you'll see, just like I did, amazing deals. I'm talking all your favorite NFL games as low as $100. And honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way you bought tickets. And you'll love the zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats. You save big. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go. Download Game Time today. So, Free, just to talk a little bit more about what we were able to see on defense and on offense, rather. And just before that, I want to take a step back and thank you guys for making the Falcon Squad show your first listen of the day, and for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network, because you know what? It has been a tough 5 weeks for you Falcons fans, and you guys have continued to rock with the show. We appreciate it, and you deserve to be a part of the party today that we have not been able to have in 5 weeks. But we did talk about the fact that what we saw on Sunday probably left us with more questions and answers. But I also wanted to highlight a few more of the reasons why it left us with some good questions, albeit questions. And that's the fact that you saw this offense kind of spreading the ball out. 7 players had catches yesterday. That was the second most for receivers to have had catches for this Falcons team this season. So what do you think allowed the Falcons to really kind of spread the ball out amongst those pass catchers?
Well, I think part of it was the sort of scheme that they were running, where, because you didn't have that one go-to guy in Drake London out there on the field, where it was just like, okay, well, when the quarterback gets into problems, he's just going to be like, okay, I'm just going to throw it to Drake. He's probably going to catch the football. And we've seen that throughout, this is, not only a 2025 issue, but that's been an issue. I remember, going all the way back to like 2015 when Matt Ryan was dealing with some issues adopting that Kyle Shanahan scheme. He was just like, well, Julio, triple covered or not, I'm just going to throw him the football and we'll see what happens. And so that becomes a problem for your team when your entire offense or your entire passing offense runs through one guy, as good as that guy is, whether we're talking about Julio Jones or Drake London. It means that your offense isn't that really effective, because defenses don't really have to defend every blade of grass, and it becomes a little bit easier on defense, even if that guy is being productive. And to me, one of the things going back and watching the film that stood out was that the Saints, despite Jarvis's thoughts on this player, the Saints really paid a lot of attention to Kyle Pitts off of the play action passing, where pretty much anytime there was play action, there were two guys sort of bracketing Kyle Pitts because they were like, okay, well, we're not going to let Kyle Pitts beat us in those situations. And that led to, some opportunities for some other guys in those play action situations, some check down opportunities for the Falcons to keep the chains moving. And so you saw some of those guys like Charlie Warner, Tyler Algier be a little bit more involved in the passing game than usual. You saw David Sills, do a little bit of, 10% of the Drake stuff that we've seen in that same role. And that allowed him to be more involved in the offense as well. And of course, you finally were able to get Darnell Mooney going in a meaningful way. And we discussed this on the post game where he had, 3 catches, 74 yards. May not necessarily blow you away in terms of his production, but as we mentioned, it was like in previous games when you needed Darnell Mooney to get 3 catches, you had to throw him the ball like almost a dozen times, as opposed to Sunday where you only had to throw him the ball 3 times. So they made the most of those opportunities. So I think a lot of it was just their ability to spread the ball around because of some of the schematic things that we've already discussed that they were doing that were different from what they had been doing before, where they would just kind of get in a straight drop back situation and say, well, screw it, Drake's open down there somewhere, let's just throw him the ball.
Yeah. And for you, Jarvis, what did you see that allowed the Falcons to spread the ball out so much Sunday?
Yeah, I think that, not having that wide receiver one, not having Drake out there, that helped. That helped a lot because, I know Free wants to say that, they were trying to take away Kyle Pitts. You know what I'm saying? He was, one of those guys that you have to pay attention to. Like, okay, but I think ultimately though, when you don't have that clear and obvious guy that this offense is going to try to get the rock to, they scheme accordingly when it comes to that. You kind of have to like base out your coverage for the most part, so you can play a lot of man coverage and essentially your NFL wide receiver has to beat man coverage because, if you're having success running the football, your safety is going to be kind of peeking, and your linebacker is going to be peeking. So you're going to have people running underneath. They're going to be open, and you're going to have some guy on the outside. You're going to have those guys locked up man on man. Like, hey, you have to beat your man. We saw Darnell do that several times. So it starts with not having your wide receiver one, and also the defense commitment to stopping the run. That helps a lot as well.
Yeah. And what about for you, Tori, when you look at how the Falcons spread the ball, what do you think was really the biggest reason for them being able to spread the ball across so many pass catchers Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, the one point that hasn't already been made is like potentially Kirk Cousins getting through his progressions at a rate that's quicker than what Michael Penix normally does. I think that something that Mike is, and this is a good thing and it can also be a bad thing. I think there are a lot of times where he doesn't pull off of his first read. And I think there's 9 times out of 10, I do believe that first read is going to be to Drake London, which again, to what everybody's saying, that's fine. That's totally fine. But when you do not have Michael Penix and you do not have Drake London and you have Kirk Cousins, who is quite, he's getting through his reads. Like people can say what they want to about Kirk, but he may not, last year we saw him not make the best decision or make the best throw, but he's getting through those progressions. So I do think of just to add a different perspective, I think that could possibly also be at play here as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair call too, Tori, because that's where you kind of see, and like you said, it doesn't necessarily say something negative about
right. It's not
as much as it's a positive. Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just like a thing.
Just an observation of something that you get to see with that veteran presence.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. And so
I'm a comment like a playlist, who's in your what songs?
Yeah, exactly. Like, your old school playlist is probably going to be your go-to at all times
Yeah.
as you're kind of getting more acclimated to and kind of liking sort of what you are adding to the playlist from, newer artists. So no, I like that analogy. That's actually a good, clean analogy. So I'm liking that, Jarvis. Now that you have had time to decompress on Sunday's game, I think the only thing, not the only thing, Aaron, I won't say the only thing, but maybe one thing that was of a little concern is Matthew Bergeron, because, this O-line has really seen it for the Falcons this season. So, I mean, how concerned are you about that? And also, not that it's an injury, but it did just agitate my soul that I just wanted Elijah Wilkinson just not to, so those are the two things that concerned me the most. As much as I loved what I saw in offense, didn't like seeing Matthew Bergeron just going down one more time. And I didn't like the fact that, come on now, what is this, week 12? And Elijah Wilkinson this is still a challenge?
Yeah. I think Bergeron did come back. It
was just a concern of mine. You just came back and then this happens.
Yeah. So, it would be a bigger concern if he didn't get back into the game. I think that at this point, and it's this ankle issue or whatever it is this going to be something that lingers, right? We've been dealing with this with Chris Lindstrom this season with his foot injury and basically him being on limited practice reps and basically all of that kind of designed to, get him ready to play on Sunday. We've seen that in the past with Jake Matthews as well, with the injury he suffered earlier this season. And to basically, if you add a third offensive lineman that's going out there every Sunday and playing at 85% as opposed to, whatever you're supposed to be at this late stage in the season, which is not 100%, but whatever that number is supposed to be, that's going to be a challenge to overcome. And you mentioned Wilkinson, where, it's been a rough 6 weeks for Elijah Wilkinson. And we were sitting there, in that 49ers game, I think was probably the first game where the issues were really like, oh, maybe this Elijah Wilkinson experiment has kind of run its course. And then you're like, okay, Storm Norton's coming back soon, right? And then Storm Norton's not coming back. And it's like, well, I don't think the Falcons are going to turn to Mike Jarrell and Jack Nelson. So they're just going to have to ride it out with Elijah Wilkinson. And, before early in the season, we had the false starts. And then it was just kind of just like, okay, well, we've got that under control and we just need the blocking to be better. And then the false starts reared their ugly head. And we know some of that's owed to, playing in the Little Caesar Superdome and, the crowd noise and all that sort of stuff that contributed to that and whatnot. And so hopefully that will be less of an issue going forward as it was on Sunday. But, you're dealing with a lot on the offensive line. It's basically just like every week there's a kind of a new challenge you have to overcome. And it would be nice to not have to deal with that for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is very well put. I also think that there are some conversations that need to be had about how things stand with this offensive line moving forward, because as we know, Jake Matthews is not getting any younger. He may be an Iron Man, knock on wood, but we're to the point where you got to start thinking about succession plans. And something you didn't do with Matt Ryan that got you into a bunch of hot water. So I think that right now you've got to start thinking of what comes after Jake Matthews at tackle and also Caleb McGarry at tackle, because he is supposed to and slated to come back in 2026 and be fine from his recovery from his injury. However, he's also not in it for the long haul. Even Caleb McGarry has said that, he's kind of just like, I'm here to make my money and to play, and then he's going to go get a cabin in the woods somewhere. We know this. So you have to start thinking about the longevity of your tackle spots, because you feel good about Matthew Bergeron, you feel good about Chris Lindstrom, and you also have to start looking at the center position as well. I think there are some issues there with protection, sliding protections, picking up on stunts and twists that I don't necessarily fully blame Ryan Newsel for that, because the quarterback has a say in those things as well. But I do think that you have seen different points in time where like Ryan Newsel is maybe not the answer long-term at the center position. So you have to start, if we're looking ahead to 2026 and beyond, those are kind of the places where you need to start really deciding and thinking about what the future looks like for those.
Yeah, and for me, I have a message for Elijah Wilkinson. You know the snap count, sir. Stay on side. Good gracious. Like this, like you said, this offense isn't good enough to make these type of mistakes. It's simple. I know it's loud. I know it's crazy. I know you're trying to get a jump on that guy because you feel like he's gonna try to get around the edge and touch your quarterback in a very violent way. But man, stay your butt on sides. That's it. That's it.
Period.
It's simple.
Yeah, you have one job. Just do that job. And we'll look at how the Falcons want to do their job of getting a second win in a row in a look ahead as they prepare to take on the New York Jets. So, Jarvis, this defense had themselves a nice game Sunday, including being able to hold the Saints to just 95 total yards in the first half of the season, fewest total yards allowed by Atlanta in a first half of the season. And they take that momentum into a game against the New York Jets, where they are actually the favorites. So what are the keys to the game in order for the Falcons to get their second straight win?
Go out there and make Kirkington as comfortable as possible. What I mean by that, Zach, listen to the man. He knows what he likes.
Yeah.
You know, like acquiesce to to the talent. You know, as a coach, that's what you're supposed to do. You know, if he doesn't feel comfortable getting in that pistol, throw that junk out the window. You know, you can put it in there every now and then, but oh my gosh, like make sure you are doing what make Kirkington comfortable. So that's the main thing for me on the offensive side of football. On the defense side of football, continue to get better. Just continue to grow, continue to get better. And D offered my salute, boy. Like my dog. You know, that's the homie right there. You know what I mean? We talking about number 20, not number 37. You know what I mean? Like I think, that's the, thing people have to understand when it comes to building or constructing a roster. Not everyone is going to be a Pro Bowler. Not everyone is going to be an All-Pro. As a matter of fact, those guys come few and far between. So you got to have guys willing to play a role for you. They might not be the greatest guy. They might get exposed from time to time, but they are contributors to your roster. They are important pieces that you surround the great ones with, right? So if you have guys like that, if I have a 4 or 5 D offers on my defense, I'm gonna be good, especially if I've drafted well at the top end of my defense. And that's what it's starting to look like for this defense, y'all. Like, come on. Like, we talked about Jalen Walker and James Pearce Jr. leading the rookies in sacks. Who had that coming into the season? I know my hand was up for Abdul Carter, you know, because that was the type of guy that he was coming out of college. So I really feel like this defense has to continue to get better, continue to highlight your young pups, get those guys out there, get those guys in those rotations, and Zach Harrison goes to IR, Brandon Dolis continues to step it up, and that's what you want. It's unfortunate that Harrison had to go down, but that's not. And you see your young guys starting to take advantage.
Yeah. And what about for you, Free? This Jets offense is, I'd say, futile at best, having scored 14 points against the Patriots a couple of weeks ago, 10 points against the Ravens. And so, of course, they're coming off 2 straight losses and are probably going to be hungry to kind of get back into the win column themselves. What do the Falcons need to do to ensure that the Jets don't return to the win column on their watch?
Well, I think when you're looking at this Jets offense, they're going to run the football. And we know that the Falcons have not done a great job stopping the run this season. They've been better the last 2 weeks, two back-to-back games where they haven't given up 100 yards rushing. And so hopefully that continues. If you can do that and you can make this Jets offense one-dimensional like you were able to make the Saints in this game, in addition to, holding down the run defense, but also the offense scoring points and forcing them to play from behind, that is basically the winning formula against a similar Jets team that is not necessarily built, especially with Garrett Wilson out of the lineup, to really just get back into a straight drop back passing attack with Tyrod Taylor at the helm moving forward. And then for your offense, you're going to need to run the football. Like the Jets obviously gave away two really, really, really good players in Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams at the trade deadline. And both of those guys are blossoming in their two new places. But it's not like the Jets are still devoid of talent on defense. That was the thing about those defenses that Jeff Ulbrich and Robert Saleh had built, that they were really strong up front. They still have Jermaine Johnson. They still have Will McDonald, and especially coming off the conversation we were just having about Elijah Wilkinson, Jake's going to be fine, but I don't know about Elijah Wilkinson in those matchups. And so if you can run the football, right, that takes some pressure off of you. You don't want to get into that situation. So again, it's basically a similar formula for the Falcons that they just had against the Saints. The question, of course, is going to be, is this a one-off? Is this something that the Falcons can repeat on a consistent basis, which has been their challenge this year, which is we have seen a very good version of the Atlanta Falcons at various points this season on both offense and defense. They just don't show that consistently week to week. And so that is going to be their big challenge against a very vulnerable Jets team that they should be able to beat. But we've seen many a game this year that we sat here thinking, the Falcons should be able to beat this team. And then they kind of no-show that game, and we'll see, with them on the road and whatnot. Now, fortunately for the Falcons, we talked a lot about how Michael Penix was not very good on the road versus being very good at home. Well, Kirk's been kind of the opposite in Atlanta, where some of his best games have come on the road over this last year plus that he's been the starter. So you feel a little bit better about that moving forward. And then the question that, of course, is going to be like, you got 2 road wins. What's going on? Can you keep it going at home? And we'll potentially be talking about that later. So I think this Jets team is going to present similar challenges as the Saints. And if the Falcons can go out there and execute their game plan like they did this past Sunday, then they should be okay.
They should. And I think, to your point, Free, one of the areas where if they can master it and do what they did yesterday. And of course, we do know that Alvin Kamara went down to injury, so we take that into consideration. But the bottom line is the Patriots were able to hold Breece Hall to 58 yards. Ravens held him to 44 yards. And those were both not just losses for the Jets, but also they weren't able to get anything going pretty much on the offensive side of the ball. So that should be one of the paths to victory for the Falcons. Now, going into Thanksgiving, obviously, you guys know we won't see you Thursday. So we wanted to just say thank you all for, of course, being our everydayers, but also Jarvis, Aaron wanted to ask you guys 2 things. Number 1, Jarvis, what are you thankful for as far as the Falcons go? And then what are you thankful for in general going into Thanksgiving?
As far as the Falcons go, I am thankful that they can punish quarterbacks. They can make quarterbacks look like they don't belong. I feel like I wholeheartedly believe that the Falcons started the J.J. McCarthy is not a good NFL quarterback campaign. They're going to take credit for it because I'm going to give it to them. So, yeah, I am very thankful for that. Personally, always thankful to be here on this earth. I'm thankful for my family, thankful for my wife and my daughters. They welcomed me home when I came in the door and everything. And, it was just good to be back home. And I'm thankful for all of our listeners and viewers, all the comments, the negative ones, the positive ones, all of it. Like, I appreciate y'all, I really do. Thanks for that.
I'm thankful for doing the show because there's nothing really the Falcons make me thankful for because it's been too much of a roller coaster of a season for me to be thankful for the Atlanta Falcons for playing with my emotions, for the last 35 years it has been. So I'm not thankful for the Atlanta Falcons. I'm thankful doing this show about the Atlanta Falcons because I appreciate both you, T, Maria, Tori. Yeah, Tori. Yeah. So I'm thankful for being able to do this show that makes me, feel better about talking about the Atlanta Falcons on a daily basis. And I'm thankful for all the listeners that check out Locked On Falcons, even as we all go down this misery of a roller coaster that has been the Falcons 2025 season. You guys are the reasons why Locked On is now the #1 sports podcast on the planet. So we appreciate you in that one. So very thankful for that. And obviously thankful for all the support I have been given over the years of this, doing this job. This is not a normal job. This job didn't exist when I was in college. And so the fact that I've been supported to be able to be in a position to do this and make a decent living off of it, is owed to not only the listeners, but also those folks in my personal life and my family members that have been able to give me some support when, I was like, wasn't necessarily like, oh, I'm going to be a podcaster, but like doing a podcast and making $0 off of it. And people were like, hey, keep doing you. And I'm like, oh, thank you for that support, because normally other people would be like, you're not making any money. You don't
as a grown up.
Yeah. You're jobless, right? You're unemployed. Is that basically what you're saying when you say podcast? Unemployed. That's the word I hear. But fortunately for me, my family didn't go down that road.
Yeah, and I gotta second that with Free. Jarvis, Aaron, Tori, Maria are locked on our Falcons squad. And in addition, for me, I also do Hawks. So that's with my guy Deshaun Tate, and just all the things that come with being a part of this podcast network. And Aaron, of course, one of the day ones. Jarvis, of course, I followed him from our old local radio station. So it's been super cool to kind of be able to do this. And yeah, like we got when these Falcons. So yeah, I really appreciate you guys, no question. And of course, for Thanksgiving, just the ability to kind of go back home and hang out with the family, and particularly, as always, the highlight of my visit, hanging out with the nephews. So appreciate that always. And of course, we appreciate you guys, as Jarvis alluded to, because, and Free alluded to, your everydayers who make this squad show your first listen. You also stop by Locked On Falcons with Aaron as your second listen. And of course, Jarvis being a frequent contributor there on Locked On Falcons. So we appreciate you for that. And don't forget to check out some of Tori's great work at AtlantaFalcons.com, which is where she had to dash off to. Happy Thanksgiving to you guys, and we will see you next time.